Hello, today we are going to create a simple Netcore API with JWT authentication. So first we are going to create new project and this is Netcore application. We will name this project web.api. Click next and this will be Netcore ASP.NET Core 3.0 and then API. Okay, then click create. So once you have created your project, we can now download the package, the needed package, and then install. And we are done installing the package. So we can configure the startup application. We're going to use app.use authentication. And then we're going to add services. Add token. So services dot add authentication. So we are going to use GWT bearer defaults dot authentication scheme. And we are going to add GWT bearer options, or options will be the token parameters. So we have options dot token valid parameters equals to new token validation parameters. So we can add this one. And then we're going to have validate issuer equals to true, validate audience equals to true, and validate issuer signing key equals to true, validate a valid issuer. So we are going to specify the website, for example, website.com and valid audience website.com. Then validate lifetime is equal to true. Wait. Mm, Lifetime validator is equal to, we're going to specify this later, issuer signing key is equal to new symmetric key, and we're going to use encoding .utf get bytes. So we are going to specify our key. So for this, we can create our own key. And for the lifetime validator, we are going to create, we're going to override private boolean lifetime validator. Then we have date time, not before date time expires, security token token validation parameters. And we are going to set a condition. If expires is not equal to null, then we're going to return expires is greater than date time dot utc now, and return false if expires is equal to null. Then we're going to copy this one in here. So we have parameters for that. And I think we're all good with this one. And then after that, we are going to set the application settings. So we're going to add, so we're going to add connection strings that has default connections. And also we are going to add token settings that has token. So for this, we have connection strings. Then this will be our default connection. So we're going to use a SQL server for this one. And we're going to specify the server password and user. So we're just going to specify the expire, the minute for the token. So we're going to expire the token every 1 minute. So once we are done specifying our application settings, we can create, we can add two folder. So we were going to specify this folder as model, and then the other one is data. And for our model folder, we are going to create a class. So our class will be user. So for our user class, we are going to create uh, integer ID get set, and then we need email address and the password. So this will be string and our password will be string, and this will be our key with we need data annotation for this one. We need a database. We need to auto increment this key generated the schema database generated options dot identity. So this will auto increment our ID. So for our email address, we are going to add the email address data annotation. So once we are done setting up our model, we are going to install a package for NetCore framework entity. Microsoft Entity Framework Core SQL. So we're going to add this one. And also we are going to add, we will be needing the framework core tools. So after installing the two package SQL Server and the framework tools, we can create the database context for user. And for our database context, we will be creating user context. So we have the database context options. Oh wait, we're going to extend this one. And DB context options for our user context options with base. And also create, we need to set the email address as a unique key. So we are going to override the model creating. Override void on model creating. So for our model, we have model builder. So we can say model builder that entity user user has alternate key, and we're going to specify the key is email address, and press Ctrl R J to remove the unused package. So we can say public db set user as our users, then getter and setters get set, and that's it. So after specifying our user context, we are going to create another controller, and this controller will be API controller, an empty one. So this will be authentication. And we are just going to set the configuration, config, and then we need the user context read only as a read only. So after that, we can inject in our controller, and then we can inject the configuration. And we're going to create action result token, and this will be a post request, and we're going to specify this one as token. So for this result, we can return a bad request, and we can declare a variable header which will get the request headers, authorization, and if header dot the string start with basic. So for our simple GWT token, there is a basic word for our token. I mean for the authorization. So we are going to get the header that starts with basic, and then we're going to create a variable that holds the credential header that's a string substring. So we're just going to trim the basic and then space length. So we are going to remove the word basic with space, and then var encrypt encoding dot utf-8. This one is based from our startup. This one, all the configuration. 8 that get string. So we're going to convert from base 64 string for our credential value. And now this will return uh, the email address, string email address with the password, something like that one. So after that, we're going to uh, split the string. That's split. Then we can check if so. We can we can have a static data in here to check credential array. For 0 will be the email address, admin, and the password is equal to. So if this is true, then we can return. We can create the token for this one, security token handler, right token. Wait, that right token. No, sorry. Return security token. So we're going to return this token. So we need to set the parameters for our token uh, that has the same settings as this one. So for that, we need issuer. So our issuer is website.com. Audience is the same. Expires date time dot UTC now. So we're going to add minutes for our token to expire. And we need to get the configuration file for this one, the app settings. We will be getting this data. So for that, we can specify string token expire minute is equal to config, and we have token settings and expire in minute. So our expiration token is in string. So we need to parse this one to double. And then not before datetime dot UTC now claims. So we need claims for this one. Signing credentials and assigning credentials. So for our claims data, var claims data is equal to new claim Json claim type dot name username. So our claims data is this one. And for our sign in credentials, we can specify var sign in credentials new. New sign in credentials that holds the key. So we need to specify the key for this one. The credentials will hold the key and security algorithm 256. And this variable will be added in here for our token. So we now have the token parameters. So we can return status okay, and we are going to add the token. Excuse me. And also we need to specify database in services. We need to add database in here. Mm, so we can say string connection string is equal to configuration in this class, and a get connection string. So our connection string name is default connection, and then we are going to add that in our services, add db context for, and specify our contacts, user contacts, and also for our options that I use SQL Server, SQL. So we have authentication services, MVC, and DB contacts. So we can try to migrate our model to our database. So you can open uh, SQL Server Management Studio and then create database test. Since uh, we set our database name as test. So we have here our database. It doesn't have tables and stored procedure. So we're going to create uh, the table based on our model. And also we're going to create a stored procedure for that. So we are going to add migration initial, and so for this error, we need to update our user context to design time creation. So click a user context, and then we are going to add a class, public class user context factory that implements iDesign factory for our user context. And also, uh, wait, we need to have the implementation interface. So this will implement the interface, and we need a variable options builder is equal to new db context options builder user context, and this options builder will use SQL Server, and we need to specify the I configuration for this connection string, then return new user context options builder dot options. So for our connection string, we can say that private I configuration, and then public user context factory var variable builder is equal to new configuration builder that add, oh no, mm, ah we're going to set base path for our directory, and then add Json file that will be for our application settings, and then we can say configuration that equals to builder dot build. So for our path, we have directory that get current directory, and then for our JSON file, it the name is app settings dot JSON, and we're going to have an option for that false reload on change true. So if there are changes, we need to reload. Mm, And for the connection string for our DB context, we can remove the string, and then we have get string, get connection string, and then the default string for this one. And we can migrate. We can try to migrate. So we have migrated our model. So it should display in our test database the table. Oh wait, we need to update database. So it now apply the migration, and oh, we refresh. We now have our database. So our database contains the ID, email, and then the password. It also has a key, primary key, and then the unique key for our email address. So after we create our table, we can also create our stored procedure. So let's try add migration isp get user. For this stored procedure, we can create a variable sp, and then which is equal to the stored procedure string, and then migration builder dot sql sp. So for our stored procedure, you can create a simple stored procedure which will select the table user. So we have this create procedure sp get user. Then we have a email parameter, and then which select the user where email address is equal to email. So after that, we can update the database, and then there should be a stored procedure in here. There we have the stored procedure. So we have now set up our database table, and we have created our stored procedure. So next, we can update the authentication controller, and instead of using a static string, we can query user. Users is equal to context users from SQL dot single or default. So our query will be, wait, our query will be execute sp get user sp get user, and our parameter email is equal to the email address, which is this one. That single or default. So once we have this stored in our model, we can change this one to users that email address, and then user that password. Mm, I think this looks good. So we're going to go to our values controller, and we can add authorize an authorize annotation. So we cannot view this one if we don't have a token in our authentication controller. So let's test this out using Postman. And so before we run our application, we need to filter a condition. So if a user, or rather users, is not equal to null, Then we can move on to our conditions. Then we can try to run this application, open Postman. So if we send a get request in our values controller, we can it will have a response 401, which is unauthorized since we have authorization for this controller. It needed an it needs an authorization. So for this example, we can say that we if we generate the post request basic authentication, and then some value for this username and password. Mm, we have a bad request since I think we haven't created the email address and then a password. So in here, in our database, it doesn't have a value. So we can temporarily create our value. So let's run this query. So after we run this one, we now have a email address and a password. So if we run this again, we have a violation for our unique key since the email address is a unique value. So we have admin at website.com 123QWE. So in our Postman, we have admin at website.com. The password is 123QWE. So it returns the token. This is the JSON web token. If we paste this one in our authorization for the get request, then we can send this request to our server. Then we can have the value. That's all. Thank you.